All right, questions 10 through 12 ask us to solve rational equations. Now remember, rational means we're going to have fractions, and equation means that now we're going to also have equal signs. And we're going to follow these steps. So step 1 is identify any restrictions on x. Okay, now remember, when you have a fraction, you can never have 0 in the denominator of your fraction, or it's undefined. So if you go through this whole process and solve these rational equations and you get an answer that would make your denominator 0, then you have to cross that answer off. Okay, that's not an answer to the equation. Okay, so the first thing we want to identify before we start is what those restrictions will be, and we'll find that by setting the factors in the denominator equal to 0. Okay, step 2, we're going to have to get a common denominator again. Step 3, this is to me the best step. You get to cross out that denominator, so then you no longer have fractions to work with anymore. And then step 4, we'll solve whatever's left in the numerators. Okay, question number 1. First, we need to find our restrictions on x. So I'm going to come over here to this third fraction because it hasn't been factored yet. And I'm looking for factors of -2 that add to a 1. So I could actually factor this as x plus 2 and x minus 1. Those multiply to -2 and they add to a positive 1. And the great thing about that is that's exactly the same factors that we have on the left side of the equation. So we need to find these restrictions on x. What we're going to do with these factors is we're going to set them equal to 0, because we know we cannot have 0 in our denominator. So if I have x plus 2 equals 0 and I subtract 2 on both sides to solve for x, I know that x would equal -2. So we cannot have an answer of -2. That is one of the restrictions on our equation. And we'll do the same thing with the other one. I have x minus 1. We'll set that equal to 0. Add 1 to both sides. And so the other restriction that we have on our denominator is that x cannot equal positive 1. So those are our restrictions, and that will be a question on your test, is find the restrictions. All right, now we need to get a common denominator. Well, we see that our common denominator is going to be x plus 2, x minus 1. And the great thing about that third fraction is it already has the common denominator. So we don't have to do anything to that numerator. So we can copy that 18 down. Now the first fraction, we need to multiply it by x minus 1 because that's what it's missing. So when I distribute that 4, I get 4x minus 4. The second fraction is missing the x plus 2. So we're going to multiply in the numerator, because we already multiplied in the denominator, times x plus 2. And when I distribute the 6, I get 6x plus 12. And then remember, once you get the common denominator and you've done all your distributing and made it equivalent to the original equation, you can cross out that denominator. So now we're left with the equation 4x minus 4 plus 6x plus 12 equals 18. This is just a simple equation now that we need to solve. So on the left side of the equation, we're going to combine like terms. We have 4x plus 6x, which is 10x. And we have -4 plus 12, which is 8. And that's equal to 18. Now I'm going to subtract 8 on both sides. And that gives me 10x equal to 10. And then when I divide both sides by 10, I'm left with x equals 1. So normally you'd be done. You'd say, okay, x equals 1 is my solution. However, we have a problem. Remember, that was one of our restrictions on x. That's one of the things that x cannot equal. So this is not a good answer. And our answer to this problem is no solution. So you always need to check your answers and compare them to the restrictions, because every so often your answer will be one of those restrictions, and that's not good. That's not a good solution. All right, number 11. So first thing I'm going to do is change my subtraction to addition and change that 2 to a negative. Okay, and we need to factor out this last trinomial here at the bottom. And that's going to factor as x plus 1, x minus 2. Which is great, because that's the same factors that we have on the left side of the equation. All right, let's find our restrictions. So we need to set those equal to 0. X plus 1 equals 0. X minus 2 equals 0. I think by now we should know that when I solve this, I would subtract 1 on both sides. So my answer would be negative 1. So our first restriction on x is that x cannot equal negative 1. And I solve the second one, I would add 2 to both sides, which would give me a positive 2 for the answer. So our second restriction on x is that x cannot equal positive 2. All right, now let's go for this common denominator. So we know our common denominator is going to be x plus 1 and x minus 2. And just like on the last problem, that third fraction is already set up great for us, so we can just copy down that 3. All right, our first fraction here at the beginning has the x plus 1 in the denominator, so it's missing the x minus 2. So we're going to have to multiply our numerator by x minus 2, which when we distribute, we get x squared minus 2x. And then our second fraction, the one with x minus 2 in the denominator, that one's going to have to be multiplied by x plus 1. So we get a negative 2x minus 2. Okay, my favorite part, we can cross out our denominator. We no longer need it. And write down what we have left in the numerator. X squared minus 2x minus 2x minus 2 equals 3. Okay, so a few things going on here. First, we have a quadratic equation because we have x squared. Okay, second thing, we're going to have to combine like terms, and we also need to get this thing equal to 0 so that we can solve it. So let's combine our like terms first. We have x squared minus 2x gives us a minus 4x minus 2 equals 3. Okay, remember this thing needs to be equal to 0, so we're going to have to bring that 3 over to the other side, subtract it over, which is going to change this to an x squared minus 4x minus 5 equal to 0. All right, now we're going to have to factor this. So we're looking for the factors of 5 that add to 4, which is 5 and 1. Now, in order for us to get a negative 4, we would need a minus 5 and a positive 1. Okay, so hopefully you remember the next step with these factors is to set each of them equal to 0. So we have x minus 5 equals 0, and we have x plus 1 equals 0. And when I solve this first one by adding 5 to both sides, I get x equal to 5 as a solution. And when I subtract 1 from each side, I get x equals negative 1 as a solution. Okay, now let's compare those solutions to our restrictions. We got x equal to 5, which is not one of our restrictions, so this is a perfect solution here. This is great. Our other solution said x equals negative 1. Well, one of our restrictions was that x could not equal negative 1. So this solution is no good. And our only answer to this question is that x is equal to 5. All right, number 12, we have a word problem. It says Thorne Stadium is the name of the football stadium in Aldine ISD. Thorne has a north, a west, and a south entrance. Thorne Stadium can be emptied using only the north entrance in 30 minutes. 15 minutes using the west entrance, and 20 minutes using the south entrance. If all three entrances are used at the same time, how long would it take to empty Thorne Stadium? So basically it's telling you how long it would take if you used only one entrance at a time, but they want to know if we open them all up and just let people leave and go home, how long would it take if they were all opened up? So when you set this up, you're going to set it up like this. 1 over the north entrance plus 1 over the west entrance plus 1 over the south entrance equals 1 over all of the entrances used at the same time. And that's what we're looking for. That's going to be our x. So if I fill in what I know the north entrance, it said, takes 30 minutes. The west entrance takes 15 minutes. The south entrance takes 20 minutes. And we're looking for how long would it take if all three were open at the same time. So just like before, we're going to need to find a common denominator. So we look at what we have. We have a 30, a 15, a 20, and an x. So first, we need to find a number that 30, 15, and 20 can all be divided into. So you could list out all your multiples and find which one they have in common. And if you did that, you would find that all of them can be divided into 60. Now we also have this x here, so our common denominator needs to be 60x. Okay, so the first fraction is 1 over 30. How do we make that 30 into a 60x? We would multiply it by 2x. Same thing with the next one. We have a 15. How do we turn that into 60x? We would multiply by 4x. The next one we have a 20. How do we make 20 into 6x? We would multiply by 3x. And on the last one we have an x. We need to make it into a 60x. We need to multiply by 60. Okay, we have our common denominator, so now we can cross it out. Solve what's left in the numerator. We have 2x plus 4x plus 3x. That's 8x equal to 60. And when we solve that, that's 9x equal to 60. When we solve that, we're going to divide both sides by 9. And when you use your calculator to divide by 9, you should get 6.666 repeating, which could be written as 6 2/3 minutes. You could write your answer as 6.6 repeating minutes, or you could say 6 minutes, and then 2/3 of a minute would be 40 seconds. Any of those answers would be great.